Well, welcome everyone. We're really excited to be sharing what we're going to share here over the next 20, 25 minutes. It's building the next generation of financial services through an API first approach. So I certainly appreciate Aaron's comments on introducing us. So in my role, I look after the financial services vertical globally here at Twilio. And we have been at the forefront, and you'll get this by the end of the presentation in terms of the transformation that's been happening within the financial services industry. So we have our legal disclaimer here, which I'm obliged to make sure I share with everyone. So it is without question a time of reinvention in our understanding and worldview. There is so much happening across the industry. Some of your panelists have been talking about it, right? Banking as a service taking off, embedded finance even more broadly impacting multiple industries outside financial services. And obviously, not to mention the fact that we've been going through a very unique time in our recent history as a planet in terms of dealing with the crisis that we've been dealing with. What that has done from my perspective is it's taken that stock phrase digital transformation, which we've been using collectively within the industry for almost 15 years now. And from a Twilio perspective, we like to think of it as more digital acceleration. And this comes from, a phrasing that we sort of seized upon in our customer engagement report. We do a report every year where we reach out to 2,000 leading C-level executives across multiple industries. Financial services is certainly a part of that. And, we ask them a series of questions around how they are leveraging APIs, because as many people here know, and of course I will touch upon that a little bit later in terms of what Twilio is, we are generally, I would say 90% an API-led company. And so, we've been focused on APIs since the start of the company. And so what we like to think of is the last 18, 20 months, 24 months has really been around digital acceleration. And we're going to talk a little bit about that today and what we mean by, API first approach and what the value drivers for the industry really are. And when I say industry, I mean financial services in the broadest sense, from fintechs to traditional incumbent players. So, again, COVID has driven a lot of that acceleration. Let's be honest, right? We've been talking about the phrase digital transformation for quite some time, but clearly the fact that people have had to go in a near 1 or 2 week time period of working from home for the last God knows how many months, it has led organizations down a path of figuring out, how do I continue to do my business? How do I engage with my customers? And when you think about how to do that in a non-face-to-face world, things like mobile take front and center. Things like APIs, which power a lot of those mobile experiences, again, take a front and center role. And so, one of the statistics that we learned from our 2021 customer engagement report / survey was that 97% of the C-suite felt that COVID has accelerated that digital acceleration, if you will, by an average of 6 years in their roadmap. And, so we've seen this year as a year of building, and 91% of those executives have certainly felt that, the ability to involve your developers and help transform them to a key resource around how you're going to engage with your customers has taken on a whole new meaning these last almost 2 years. So when you think about our company, our CEO Jeff Lawson wrote a book which got published early this year. It's called Ask Your Developer. And the premise of the book is really to highlight the central role that developers play as it relates to building out those unique digital assets that organizations can leverage to, again, interact with customers, right? Because ultimately what APIs allow an organization to do is really three things, right? Number one, APIs bring agility, they bring speed to the development process. Number two, what APIs do is it allows you to interoperate across multiple applications, right, at the same time. And number three, both of those first two things help lead to number three, which is develop a better customer experience. And much of what Jeff's book is about is how developers sort of play that central role in creating those wonderful experiences. So, when we think about the digital era that we're all upon, it really, we think about three key experiences from our perspective as a company, right? Number one, every company is a software company in our view, right? Everyone is trying to create a differentiated experience to connect with their customers, and they're doing it through software, and they're doing it through developers who in turn are leveraging APIs to do that. That's number one. Number two is those developers need to have ways and tools to better iterate and build solutions. Sometimes those solutions end up being a dead end road. They have to flip and go into another direction, but that's okay because that's what developers are experienced in doing. Ultimately, this is all taking organizations down the right path. And then, of course, you want to share the business problems with your developers. And so Jeff's book, kind of talks a lot about that. Again, because as you share those problems, developers, have a sort of, methodology around attacking those problems. And, from our perspective, we see APIs as being central to that, right? I mean, if you think about, the sheer growth, I would imagine, half of your attendees and your panelists are probably from the fintech space, if not more. And those organizations have probably been around at most 10 years. I would say most of them have been around for 5 or 7. And I would bet you that a vast number of them, again, are developer-centric cultures, and they're using a lot of the tools that organizations like Twilio, sort of provide. So this forms a key part of that customer engagement, sort of mindset that organizations are increasingly focusing in on. And the question is, well, why, focus on customer engagement? And we like to think that customer engagement can drive 4 key aspects of that customer value chain. So first and foremost, better customer engagement allows you to acquire customers, right? There's an 8 to 10x, better response rates when it comes to outreach, whether that's an SMS related outreach or a voice related outreach or an email related outreach, right? And again, I'll get into some of the examples, but we do work with a variety of organizations, and there's some logos that are on the bottom of each of these 4 sections. But so that's one aspect, is the acquiring of the customer. Then there's the converting them to a customer, right? And again, the better the digital engagement, the customer engagement, the better that conversion rate will be. And we've seen on average 3x improvement when you're using digital APIs. Of course, to serve customers is really where kind of that relationships get solidified. And when you think about the digital environment that we're all in, an increasing amount of activity happens via mobile channels. And so fraud prevention, right? Account identity verification, things like that form such a central part of how organizations connect with their customers that, we have seen that we're able to reduce fraud by 86% on average. And of course, that then all flows to then ensuring that you retain that customer, because that is perhaps one of the richest assets that an organization has is their actual customer. And we've been able to increase CSAT scores on average 39 points. And so when we think about digital engagement, it really kind of runs that full gamut from prospect to happy customer. Ultimately, the decision that organizations are going to be increasingly having to make is build versus buy. And this is where, again, Twilio has, sort of formed a core function, which is in providing those building blocks, those Lego blocks for organizations to build unique customer experiences. Sometimes those are internal customers, but most of the time, those are external customers. So let's talk about some of the 5 major trends that we have seen as a company in the last year. Number 1, digital is soaring, right? Personalization is a priority for most organizations. Number 2, digital is driving sort of the agility around managing your workforce, whether that's your front office salespeople, it could be, your contact center people, right? But you have to figure out a way to enable them to work wherever they may need to work. And that's been a key aspect of the last couple of years. Number 3 is that the core regulated industries, and I include healthcare and public sector outside financial services, has embraced digital, right? Number 4 is that video has been an increasing medium that organizations are using to connect in the absence of actually being able to do that. And again, the 5th trend that we have noticed as a company is that organizations are increasingly building those experiences. When I think of financial services, I really think of 3 key trends, and this covers everything, right, from the youngest fintech to your traditional incumbent player. Number 1, there's a redefining of customer engagement because you can't meet your customer. So organizations have to figure out ways to create a solid digital channel or channels, right? We like to think of it as an omni-channel suite of experiences. And, I would say most fintechs are largely in that first camp, right, of redefining that customer engagement experience. Accelerating digital transformation, I like to think that, this is kind of where you are really focused on coming up with what are the new processes that an organization needs to build out, right? Think of the mortgage process, right? Think of the sheer amount of new technical capacity that banks have built of all sizes when it comes to the mortgage process, and how much of that has now gone digital, from digital signatures to e-notary capabilities. Digital closings are now available in something like 30 odd states in the US, right? So accelerating that digital transformation is a key trend. And coupled with that as it relates to your traditional incumbent institution is the last point or trend, which is replatforming legacy tech, because we know that the technology that is required for trends 1 and 2 are not necessarily supported by the on-prem legacy infrastructure that most traditional organizations have. So what we're noticing and are discussing with a variety of companies is how to create an microservices layer on top of some of that legacy infrastructure, which over time they can then sunset. But it's to then help them create that modularity, right? To involve a lot of the new SaaS products that organizations are increasingly taking advantage of, how to, migrate more of their workload to the clouds. So these are the three key top trends that we've seen so far this year. So who is Twilio? We're a $2.8 billion revenue run rate company. We have 250,000 enterprise customers. But here's the next two statistics are the most important in my mind. Number one, we have 10 million developers that are actively working using our APIs, right? They are constantly giving us feedback around the documentation, and it's always improving. And in 2020, we powered 1 trillion human interactions. So that to me is one of the most important statistics because it speaks to our ability to scale as a company. And this is just, I'm not going to bore everyone with all the details here, but effectively, we like to think of ourselves as the world's leading customer engagement platform that delivers these capabilities via APIs. And, for the first 10 years of our company's founding, these are the core APIs that we support. So everything from voice, right, to SMS, to email, to video, to chatbot, WhatsApp, Facebook Messenger. What we've done is we've created an API layer that sits on top of a broad range of telco networks globally to allow people to consume these APIs in their mobile or desktop application. And ultimately, these APIs are leveraged to help power what I like to think of as these 4 core capabilities from a financial services point of view. Number one, they're increasingly leveraged to provide proactive capabilities, right? Anticipatory services. They're omni-channel, right? So meet the customer over the channel of their choosing. They're increasingly focused on personalizing those messages. So Zach, the message you get from Chase may be different from the message I get from Chase, right? And the idea is that it's going to help each of us better respond, hopefully. And then number 4 is do it within a compliant communications infrastructure so that all of those communications are secure. These are some of the companies, and this is a broad cross-industry sort of view of the organizations that are using Twilio. For those of you who were on the earlier talk and you heard Amit speak, right? He talked about Uber. Uber, all of the communications when you're using an Uber or a Lyft are powered by Twilio, right? He talked about Cabbage. Cabbage uses Twilio. Of course, Cabbage is now part of American Express, right? He talked about, he works for Green Dot, right? But he also talked about Stash, and both Green Dot and Stash are Twilio customers. So again, N26, they're leveraging Twilio APIs in the front office, in the contact center, right? They've got 7 million customers globally, and they've been with us for 5-ish years. Chime, which has something like 12 million customers, again, has been building a lot of their capabilities using not just Twilio APIs, but other APIs. And of course, Bank of America, Erica, right, which has, I think, almost 20 million customers. again, has been leveraging APIs, not all Twilio, but has been leveraging APIs to build those unique customer experiences. And I'm going to leave everyone with this slide. And here are just some of our select customers. And I bifurcated the slide into two halves, right? On the left-hand side are the digitally native companies, right? Like Stripe and Wise, Nubank, which is the world's largest challenger bank. They're all leveraging Twilio APIs in some capacity. But what's really interesting are the organizations on the right-hand side that are now increasingly looking at the cohort on the left and saying, what can we do with APIs to build those customer relationships that we need to have if we're going to take our organizations to the next generation of customers? Because as we all know, millennials are the dominant, generation, right? From a channel usage perspective. And it's forming a core driver for how the organizations on the right are looking at companies like Twilio, and again, are thinking about APIs. So I'm going to leave everyone with this last point, and it's a point that Jeff, our CEO, brings up a lot. And it's time to build, not buy. Because our view is if you're buying, you're dying as an organization because you're coming up with another Me Too offering. And it's when you build that you create those unique experiences that customers enjoy and they will come back for. So with that, I'm happy to take some questions, but do certainly appreciate the time. It would have been great to have met in person.
Absolutely. And what's the best way to get in touch with Twilio, Bijon?
Well, I mean, certainly people can reach out to me, I can post my email address in the chat for everyone, and then I can help direct you to the best person. That's perhaps is probably the most efficient way.
Fantastic. We did have a couple of questions come through, but we're about up for time. So
okay.
Maybe I'll pass those to you offline and we can send out the answers to the people that asked them.
Perfect. Okay. I'm going to put my email in as well.
Wonderful.
All right. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Bijon, and thank you, Twilio, for supporting the event.
Of course. Take care. Bye.
Well.